że pomoc, jakby spotykamy się z jakby różnymi sytuacjami i każdy z nas jakby przechodzi.
We face different situations, and each of us goes through different stages of the drama we face in the forest. I was lucky as I haven't met many little children in the forest. I met some kids, several years old, 10 years old, teenagers, but not many. That definitely made it easier for me. Because the small kids in the forest, that's a nightmare. It's a nightmare every time, but there is a bit of a gradation. Older people, weak people, handicapped, or elderly, or children, that's definitely scary. We haven't seen any bodies, any dead children, but it seems impossible to me that all of those children who arrive here ill or with different medical issues that medicine in their country or the financial situation doesn't allow to combat, that we only saw so few of those bodies so far. The time will come when people will exhume the remains and discover those bodies. Just the fact that in Europe, in the 21st century, people simply disappear is unimaginable. The number of people who are looked for by their families and whom we couldn't locate for months now, neither among the living nor the dead, that leads me to believe that there must be many more bodies in the forest.
To jest taka skala i dlatego też myślę, że po prostu nie ma możliwości, żeby przez tyle miesięcy zmarło tak mało osób.
We started the first episode of season 4 with this part of an interview that we recorded back it was Christmas Eve 2021 when we went to Podlasie and did some reporting work from the area. And this stayed with us for such a long time. An episode about Podlasie and the Polish-Belarusian border was actually supposed to be first episode of season 2, and now it's a first episode of season 4. I don't know why. I think I was also not mentally and emotionally ready for it. I just needed more. But now I think we're gonna get more because we have Anna Alboth here with us. And Anya, I was really thinking how to introduce you because you're everything. You're like a Swiss knife. You're an activist, you're a journalist, you're a blogger. Your family is like, I don't even know really how to describe you guys as a family.
The travel family.
They
have the blog.
But they do so much more. It's just like her kids were on TED, and then they did those like really amazing speeches. So without further ado, I will just say welcome. Super happy that you're with us.
Thank you for having me here today.
And it's a shame that we will be discussing those difficult issues, but basically we always discuss difficult issues. And we would like to start by asking you to tell us a little bit about this Polish-Belarusian border and the history of this crisis. Because you and me, we're used to the fact that in Poland, everybody knows about it. This is a topic, it's not maybe non-stop anymore, but it was on news a lot. So everybody in Poland feels like they are an expert on the issue. But you would be really surprised how little people know in Europe about this situation. They know that there's something, like a problem, but nothing really specific. So you have to just lead us through it.
Then let's go back to summer 2021, when the dictator of Belarus, Lukashenko, opened an artificial path to Europe. New path, surprising for all of us, for activists working on different European borders, for me as a Polish person, surprising. At the beginning of July, I started to get messages from people living along the border. They knew me as a person working in the topic of migration, and they were sending me pictures of young boys with small backpacks in the fields of corn, fields of corn like we have in Poland in summer. But boys looking like all the boys that I'm meeting on different European borders. And that was shocking for me. It was shocking that after many years of work in this topic, this topic came to my own country.
Mhm.
Lukashenko started additional flights from different locations, from Middle East, from Turkey, from Iraq. There were a lot of agencies encouraging people to take those flights. Some of the visa restrictions were put down. So basically, the fastest, cheapest, and safest route to Europe was opened from one day to another. And at the beginning, we knew that people are crossing from Belarus to Lithuania and Latvia. But knowing how borders work, we know that next border will be next. Yes, that if people are stopped on one border, probably you can look on the map and see where is the next place to go. August 2021, that was a moment when we Polish activists, human rights defenders, humanitarian workers from various different organizations, we decided to have a call, knowing that if this is happening in Lithuania and Latvia, it will be very soon happening in Poland. We call it like a war council, the council of elderly before the war starts. This was the Polish phrase we used, having the first call, I don't know, maybe 20 people. 20 people I knew from very different situations of my life, but we didn't have really humanitarian work in Poland before. So most of the people knew humanitarian stories in theory, were sitting in front of their laptops, were, I don't know, analyzing reports from different corners of Europe, but not being in the field. So it was a bit of a theoretical discussion. We immediately divided the work that, I don't know, legal teams will take care of the legal stuff, more educational organizations might prepare leaflets, toolkits that we can go to the field, to the villages where activists like the one we heard just a minute ago are from. We managed to visit more than 100 villages, knocking from doors to doors, to give people leaflets with information, but also telephone number, to call us if they have any question. We had an info line. I was sometimes having those duties on the info line. People were calling, asking, so where can I buy the gun to shoot them?
Oh my God,
That
seriously?
was one of the first calls I got.
God.
And I just couldn't believe. I felt that like after a car accident, when you are in shock. For the first week, I just couldn't believe that things like this will very, very soon start happening in my own country. And then it went very, very fast. So after our team met first people in the forest, I don't really remember the next 3 months. Going there and hiding at night in the forest, carrying big backpack with food and water to bring it to people who are starving. So, not doing anything else than just answering to basic needs of people, doing it in my own country, still hiding from drones and border guards of my own country. That was mind-blowing for all of us. And here we are, 3 years later. The situation didn't change into better at all. People are still coming. Last month, our team met more than 700 people. Met meaning helped more than 700 people. Altogether, we had contact with, I think, right now, 25,000 people.
Jesus Christ. Wow. 25,000.
And you may not know this about Poland, but Poland is not used to any type of refugees, like really almost any. We had some Chechens in the asylum procedure, but this was kind of a shock to the society that even like somebody wants to come to Poland, first of all. But it's like it's a sad reality, but we do not have people of color in the country. They're like individuals.
Yeah.
Like you can really point out in each city that there is like one or two person that is not super white, right? So this was something that like, and it's not only because of that, like Poland was supposed to participate in the relocation process
In
from
2015,
Greece,
yes.
and Italy, and it was we had a female prime minister at the time. Her name was Kopacz. She signed the deal, and then they lost elections a few months later, and the new government said like, well, no, thank you. It was the previous government, so we didn't take even one person. They were supposed to take
7,000,
it's not
I
even
think.
7,000. So it was very little for the society.
But I understand the hate and the feeling, but to call and say, "What do I buy a gun to shoot them?" That's just, even for me, that I was prepared for the hate, but I wouldn't be prepared for something like this.
But you know, I very much believe in talking with people. And as long as he is calling and he wants to ask this question, it took a lot of patience of mine to go on with this conversation. I don't think that he changed his mind at the end of the situation, but I was sure that he will call again if he sees somebody. So a lot of people had doubts at that time if it is legal to share with somebody bread or give them something to drink, or people were asking if somebody can put them into the car and drive them to a bigger city that they can go to the train station or to the bus station. People had a lot of questions. Fair point, fair questions, especially on the east of Poland, in this region. It's a very a very far away place. There is a lot of people moving to this region, people who don't want big cities, people who don't want to meet others. Well, how funny, the whole world came to them. But if you imagine some old lady sitting in her small house, never meeting anybody from outside of her region, and suddenly there is a group of African men coming and knocking at her doors, it's fair point that she might be scared, she might not know what to do. That's why we were running all these educational campaigns. But well, Polish government and Polish border guards, they were as fast as us because they were also going from doors to doors, saying a bit different story, saying, if you see anybody, call us. We will come and we will bring them to refugee camps. That was the official narration at the beginning. And you have to know that border guards at that time in this region, they had very high trust of society because most of the people living on the east, they would have a brother, father, uncle between border guards. It was a good job. It was not very difficult because there was nothing happening on this border. I met many border guards who liked it because they like to walk in the forest. They enjoy
The nature
and the calmness of their work. Well, everything has changed.
I remember people were telling me that there were those posters on people fences, murem za mundurem, which means like we're standing as a wall behind the uniform, right? So people would put this, and this division between the humanitarians and activists and the army, so-called, started, that it was pretty obvious, like at some point, who's doing what in the area. At the beginning, local people believed, border guards believed that the way to help refugees is to put them into the car and drive them to refugee center. This was not happening. They were putting them into the car and they were bringing them back to the line of the border and pushing them back. And it was very difficult in the first month to convince people that we activists are not some crazy people telling crazy stories. And then one situation happened when there was a big group with a lot of kids taken to headquarters of the border guards, close to the border, to the yard, fenced yard. But local people and all the activists who arrived, they had a chance to interact with this group through the fence. I don't remember now how many people it was. It was in Michałowo, so-called case of kids from Michałowo. And then media also came. So media were able to make pictures, very touching pictures of a lot of small kids.
And few hours later, we got pictures of the same families from behind the fence. And that was a moment when Poland started to believe us, started to believe that it's really happening.
They were all over the news, by the way. It was like non-stop on different televisions, following the
We
fence.
still don't know what happened
to
with
them,
those kids.
right? Nobody knows.
Until now.
You mentioned the visas, and I read an interview. Foreign Minister Radoslav Sikorski, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, claimed that in La Gazeta Wyborcza that
Very
90.
nice.
All right, cool. 90% of people recently detained while trying to cross the border have Russian visas, and they are sent there from Moscow to Minsk to destabilize the European Union. So, what do you say about that?
Of course, what Lukashenko done 3 years ago must have been in cooperation with Russia. There is no way that he does anything in different way. The neighboring countries, Lithuania, Latvia, they were using also some of the diplomatic powers to stop Lukashenko organizing these flights. And they managed. So there is much less flights coming to Minsk, to the capital of Belarus. So the movement moved a little bit more, and people are coming to Moscow. There is, in the last year, probably most of the people are coming from Moscow to Minsk and then to the border. There is also a lot of people who lived in Russia, people of color, people of very different ethnicities, who, when the full-scale war in Ukraine started, decided to come because they didn't want to stay there, but also they were afraid. I met young people, students of medicine on the 4th year of studies in Moscow, who realized that this situation now with Polish-Belarusian border is an opportunity which might not happen again, that they could live in Europe, even if they were aware that 4 years of studies will go for nothing. I had a long conversation with a guy like this in the forest. He said, well, the path started, people were talking about it. It's still not so risky because at the end, even if so many people already died there, if we compare it with any other route to Europe, it's very hard to say, but it's nothing to compare with Mediterranean route. And people are aware, and most of the people are very lucky and they can cross the border super fast. Those who are stuck between the armies, who lose the phone and then they are not able to move forward, they are the ones who at the end contact us and we are helping them. But most of the people cross without any problem until today.
Okay.
We during this podcast, whoever is watching it will see pictures of Karol Grygoru, who was there at the border with you, a great Polish photographer and photojournalist. We will see also some footage from our own Douglas Herman. And so you could imagine more or less how the border looks like. But Anya, can you describe it a little bit? Because it is not like an average border. The forests, the density, and so on.
The east of Poland is very wild. There is a lot of huge forests, very dense forests, national parks. There is not many villages all around the border. There is not many roads. People who live there, they need to have a car. There is no other way to communicate there, commute there. I didn't know this region well. I went there maybe with some school trip many years ago. I didn't know how those forests look like. It's not only very dense forest and very big forest, but there are also swamps and rivers. And this is an extremely difficult geography, especially for people who don't expect it. It's very difficult to walk. It's very easy to get into the mud and be stuck. We learned a lot as activists. We had to learn a lot. We had to gain a lot of, scout skills, how to find yourself without any light at night, how to hide, how to go on the ground and hide in the mud. but sometimes when we get the pin, the location of a group in need, it takes 8 hours, 10 hours to get there. And you have to remember that we are with big backpacks full of water or soup or shoes or jackets, super heavy. I'm always surprised, when I take such a backpack on the back and I'm hardly standing, but then with all the adrenaline and all the situation, we are able to run. It's difficult not to hurt yourself in the forest when it's dark. The branches of trees are hitting your eyes. There were some people using the ski glasses because it was helpful. How ridiculous, no? And all of this to give water to somebody who is dying. All of this.
Is there any dangerous animals in that area? Wolves or bears?
There are animals, they are not really dangerous. But we heard a lot of stories from people that feel like, fairy tales or some dreams when they wake up and they see the bisons or how is washing?
Moose. Yeah.
There were kids telling us that they've seen giraffes. Of course
in
not.
In the movie I saw. When it was a scene
Green
in the
Border,
movie. It's like, I
yes.
saw the giraffe.
Yes, the film Green Border, all the situations in this film are based on our experiences. The filmmakers team, they were consulting with us every scene.
Yeah, and I want to ask you, how close is the movie Green Border to reality? Because there are some scenes that are shocking, even to me, that I experienced something in the border of North Macedonia. But there, especially the scene where the child goes deep in the swamp and he just dies when he's with that Afghan woman. How close?
There is more than 100 people confirmed deaths in this last 3 years. We heard from refugees about much more. So people would be reporting to us that they've seen bodies on the Belarusian side or on the Polish side. There is a lot of people who are lost. So, the family back home or people they were going to were contacting us asking if we heard anything about them. Of course, some of them don't want to be found. Yes. So, of course, there is some percentage of people who are not lost in the forest, but somewhere else in Europe. But unfortunately, I'm very sure that there is much more people who died there, because even myself, when I was going to some groups, I was meeting on the way other groups or other individuals who couldn't move anymore. In the dark forest, I stepped on people by accident. So, and it's a huge territory. It's many, many, many hundreds kilometers. So the scale of this tragedy is much bigger than we are reporting, because we can say only about the confirmed deaths. But coming back to the movie, reality is worse than this movie.
Oh my God.
There was a lot of discussions around the movie, how to do it, which situations to show that people will not leave cinemas immediately. How to keep the balance between reality and still not making people to shut down or to get completely traumatized. But I think the film is showing also, I think it's so difficult to imagine how it is in this place. And this film is the best tool for it. I myself, yes, I was telling, I don't know, my husband, my mom, a lot, not everything, from the stories that we experience, because that's a topic for traumatologists, not for my family. But only when they watched the film, they were like, this is what you are doing there. Yeah. This is the reality. And it's rightly shocking, but it could be much more shocking. It was a choice not to put the most hardcore things in there.
Where was it shot? In the same area? Where was it shot, the movie?
No, it was not shot there. You cannot enter it. There is an emergency zone. There was an emergency zone. Now they prolonged it. despite the new government. So you cannot. I've listened to one podcast where they shot it in a very similar area. I just forgot.
There were some
Somewhere close to
scenes
Warsaw.
which they were shooting, I don't know, from the car just to have a feeling about the border. But
Yeah. It's a like heavily militarized zone at the moment. Like we will show some of the footages. Like when you pass by, there's just like fences, barbed wires, and so on. And the previous government introduced first this zone that's for like certain number of kilometers from the fence. Like there was no fence before they started building it. Before it was just forest. You couldn't really tell where Poland ends and Belarus starts. So yeah, that was a problematic thing. Like people were already sort on Polish territory, but could be still pushed back.
I think the state of emergency is also a very interesting tool.
Yes.
Very smart tool done by our government. Of course, it was introduced that we cannot enter. So we, local organizations, international organizations, cannot help people.
Newspapers, press. Yeah.
But strategically, the fact that media couldn't go there to cover those stories made a huge difference. Because if you cannot look into eyes of somebody, it's much easier to raise the fear around them. And here we can compare it with the situation with Polish-Ukrainian border, when Ukrainians started to come. And all Poland was sitting into the cars, driving to the border, welcoming people, giving them water, giving them soup, inviting them to the car, driving them to another European country, anywhere they wanted. But they could look into each other's eyes and they could meet. And this is exactly what was completely erased, is still from Polish-Belarusian border. Journalists to meet with the refugees, they had to, and still have to, cooperate with activists.
Yes, but for them, I mean, the zone is still there, but basically what can happen is that they're going to get a fine. I think nobody is really getting, especially media, they're not being arrested for entering, right? And if you work for a big news outlet, then, it's okay, you're going to get 500 zloty fine.
It's Sonia, you would be surprised what was happening. There was, in November 2021, that was the moment when probably the topic was the most popular in international media. There were hundreds of TV crews coming to cover the story. And they were all respecting this zone.
So just approaching the more or less
it was the
place
self-censored situation that journalists who were going to Syria and to Afghanistan and were reporting from difficult places, they were afraid of crossing the line because they will pay a fine. I couldn't believe it. For me, also from the media perspective, the fact that international media were buying press coverage from Belarusian authorities to have pictures of the fence. I mean, there should be blank pages in the newspapers. Media were not protesting at all and are still not protesting. Just few weeks ago, we organized a press conference for journalists about the situation on the border in the zone. I mean, at the end we didn't, but we wanted, because we wanted the journalists to see how ridiculous it is that they cannot work, they cannot do their work in the European Union country.
Yes, exactly. And I think like everybody comes to more or less the border area where, for example, like Janka Ochojska goes there, right? So it's like, a parliamentarian, famous humanitarian, then they have maybe something very specific. But I heard from several people around the border that they were very unhappy with how different stories were covered because it was very flat.
So, I read the Prime Minister Donald Tusk new plan to introduce this exclusion zone on parts of the border. Is it the same one that we were talking about, this zone, or is it a different one?
It's a bit smaller. Okay. But still, we were all shocked that with the change of government, they again go back to the same narration that the zone is needed, that it's helpful, that less people will cross thanks to this. We all know no fence and no zone is stopping people to come.
Okay.
I think we really need to explain what is really happening to people who are stopped right after they cross the border. So when they're stopped by the Polish border guards, and what is happening on the Belarusian side.
Belarusian side is difficult because we cannot go there. Nobody can go there. No media, no organizations are there. All what we know is from testimonies of people, from their videos, from their photos. This is absolutely wild what is happening there. The level of violence was growing every month since these 3 years. People are extremely beaten up. They are shooting into their direction. They are shooting into people. They are using dogs to bite. The latest news we are having in the last 2 months, this is crazy, but Belarusian side is using snakes to threaten people. They put people into the cars and they put snakes in this. We heard already many testimonies like this. Violence towards women. Almost every woman had a situation of physical and sexual violence on the other side. Belarusians are doing everything to force people to cross. Physically or mentally, they would threaten the father that they will kill his son if he will not start throwing stones or destroying the fence. So there is a systematic push, systematic pressure on people to be more and more aggressive. Belarusians are also forming bigger groups, because we know this is the most scary big group of men attacking the border. This is all organized. There is no way to do anything on the other side without the approval of Belarusians. There is no way that somebody from Moscow or from Minsk comes on his own to the border and crosses. It's all organized on the other side. And then they are being pushed to Poland. Now there is a 5.5 meter high fence standing. In theory, it should stop people crossing. In practice, it might stop a boy on the wheelchair crossing, because it's more difficult to climb the fence. There are women and kids crossing the fence on the top, in between, or underneath. The only thing that changed with the fence is that people have much more physical harm. When they fall from the fence, they have broken arms or legs. And then on the top of all the things they are going through, if you still have a broken leg in the forest and cannot move, it's even more difficult. In
the movie, they show these pregnant women being thrown from over the fence. I hope that's not true.
It is true. There is many pregnant women coming also because of the sexual violence on the other side and on the way, like on every path. We met a lot of women who lost pregnancies. I remember this one woman who lost their baby in the forests just before we arrived. And then she even has no chance, to wash herself after all of this. We were coming every day to help her for a few days.
And then you have to leave her there.
Yeah.
This is for me emotionally the hardest part, because this is what we can do. We can come, we can bring power banks to people, we can bring mobile phones when they don't have mobile phones, we can bring food, clothes. But it is seen as a crime if you put somebody into the car and drive him or her somewhere else. Actually, according to Polish law, it is a crime only if you gain from it. But lawyers would be turning the story around, saying that activists can gain fame, for example. So there is a gain. Maybe some podcast will invite me to speak, you know?
We were so sorry we did this to you.
So it is risky. It is very risky. It's not a crime to help somebody, especially, I don't know, to drive him to hospital. But it is seen like this. So people are very, very afraid of doing it. Going to the forest, giving this absolutely basic help, explaining the situation. This is another emotionally very difficult thing for me, especially at the beginning. Now people who are crossing, they more or less know that when they entered, it doesn't mean everything will be fine. But at the beginning, like in the Green Border film, when they saw on the map that they are on the Polish side, they were so happy. They were saying, we are in European Union.
Yeah, we entered Europe,
This scene, when I watched it in the film, I think that was the most touching situation for me, because I know what it means, like that it means absolutely nothing. So explaining to people what is their situation, telling them that they have two options. They can apply for international protection in Poland or try to go further. Applying for international protection means we have to call border guards to come to facilitate the process. And we know that in 99% situations, they will say yes, yes, put them in the car and bring them back to Belarus. So people, families, groups are being divided. There was a lot of situations that families, mothers with kids were divided somewhere in all these processes. You know, they didn't care that they take mother on one car and the baby on another car. We were always trying to help to find families back, to get some information.
Yeah, no, we were, like Rashid couldn't believe that this was a real situation, the one with women losing pregnancies. But I remember, so Grupa Granica is informing regularly about everything that is happening on their channels, but it wasn't even that much reported on the news, right? That there, I remember this woman from Congo, she was just basically thrown through the fence on the other side, being super pregnant. And I was thinking about this, that, like, you know, a situation like this doesn't move you. It wasn't much in the news, but also it didn't create some kind of a movement or even a question from like a larger group of people from the society. And I was thinking, you know, years back, remember when the little boy Alan Kurdi washed off the shores of Greece and Turkey, he was on the Turkish side, and there's this picture of the guard walking with the body of the baby, and it moved so many people. I remember when I came to Greece, there were so many volunteers, and one of them from Canada, she was saying that like it changed the society, seeing this picture that so many people decided to go abroad, start sponsoring those visas to Canada for people, that it was such a big thing from one picture practically.
It was.
It did not happen. And now the difficult thing, in your opinion, I'm very opinionated about this, but I want to know from you, how much do you think the color of the skin of people play in this situation? I'm referring also, of course, to the situation at the Ukrainian border when Ukrainians were crossing and all those border guards going with, you know, helping the mothers, carrying the children through the border, carrying the big suitcases, and then so many comments underneath those posts like, this is how true refugees look like. It's mothers with children, men stay home and fight, right? Those were the comments all the time. And in my mind, we really cannot identify with people from Middle East. It's just the culture is very far away. People look different. With Ukrainians, it's a different thing.
I spent the first week on the Polish-Ukrainian border when it all started. And I had the situation at the very beginning when I arrived and when I saw border guard in the same uniform as the border guards 20 kilometers north on the Belarusian border, helping Ukrainian woman carrying the baby. I was very happy that Poland opened the border and was hosting so many people immediately, and it was not a problem. But I was so angry this first week. I just couldn't deal with it. I went to this border guard and I asked him, like, have you been so sweet up north?
Yeah, in the movie, they just seen.
He answered, he looked at me very seriously. Here, the movie is a little bit different. He answered, "Thanks God they didn't send me there."
Wow.
I mean, in the film, we see that it's the
Yeah.
same actor, that it's the same
Yeah.
person, and maybe he's just lying. I believed this guy. And I believed him, and I felt this in this moment that on the Ukrainian border, when people are allowed to help, when they are encouraged to help, when it's seen as a nice thing to help, those border guards and soldiers carrying those babies and mothers and luggage, they were so happy. They were so proud that they are able to help. And I really believe that people are mainly good and that it is natural thing to help in such a situation. But on the Belarusian border, it's criminalized. The same scene, carrying a baby, is a crime. So if you put on this level, it's narration, yes? And of course, the border guards on Belarusian border, they have to, in some point, believe in their own narration, that they are protecting country, that they are protecting Europe, that those people coming are bad. Probably they couldn't deal with it if they wouldn't have their own narration about it. But I think that if the answer of government would be different, they might be very happy carrying a Syrian baby there, like Poland did 20 years ago with 90,000 Chechens, people of different religion and culture. Poland at that time was not afraid of them. The wife of President Kaczynski, the other Kaczynski, was going to hospitals welcoming Chechen women. So if you don't use migration as a political game, it doesn't have to be a horror story. But yes, color matters. On Ukrainian border, Ukrainian refugees were treated very differently than Ukrainian Roma refugees. We had to remind people that Ukrainian Roma is also Ukrainian, and that he and she are also refugees. This division was very clear. It was pure double standards, racist behavior.
In the movie, they send this captain to the border to motivate the soldiers to push back, and he tells them that these are not human beings, but weapons that Putin using to attack us. So just dehumanizing these people so they can push this narrative and people do whatever they want with them.
But so there is this dialogue, like, okay, we're not naive. We know that not everybody is good and kind, and the probability that there are some people who may be criminals or may not have pure intentions
Are crossing.
Yes,
absolutely.
people
of course,
are actually crossing, right?
Yeah.
But now the question is the solution to this situation to risk that they may cross, may go farther, may stay in Poland, or send them, like try to push them back? Or is it to actually build some kind of centers where you verify people? And now I spoke to a friend who is a diplomat, and he told me that he believes that Polish state is not prepared for it and will not be prepared for like a thorough check of people. And this is why those centers do not happen.
Of course, doing pushbacks is actually contradiction to security of Poland and Europe. Because if you push people and they come back, except the people who unfortunately died, they all in some point, in some part of the border cross. So they are all coming in without being checked at all. Even while they are doing pushbacks, they don't check, from which country or from which group is the person. The solution would be to act according to law and to check people. Of course, it takes time and money. People have to be interviewed, their profile has to be checked, they have to be accommodated somewhere. But the amount of money that went to build the fence defense, which, you know, is like falling in different places because this ground is so unstable. And then the next level, and then another barbed wire, and all the plan that they have for the next 2 years of fortifying the border even more. There is money to deal with this situation, but it's put into defense and into military, into better drones. This is the biggest growing business in Europe right now. We are here not talking, the enemy here is not somebody anti-migration who is afraid of refugee. There is a huge business behind it and huge gain. And if you build defense, you also build your political power, because if there are enemies, there can be political party to protect your citizens. There is this great book of German researcher Frank Wolf, Behind the Walls. He's analyzing the change of legal systems in the countries that build fences.
Wow.
He's showing that building fences and introducing this gray zone when violence happens, when nobody's punished for it, is actually contagious, and the whole country is becoming more and more gray zone. Very, very scary to analyze.
But I think it's also contagious within Europe. You know, like, for example, I remember specifically when you first told me what is happening, and you mentioned Lithuania, that the pushbacks have started in Lithuania, and it's like very soon it's going to come to us. It was this summer of 2021, and it moved, like, right? And people were always saying, when we were working on Lesbos in Serbia, if we were just like saying, yeah, but the problem is so far away from us. It's never going to, it's like, this is a globalized world. Of course, it's going to somehow come to us, this or that way. But the fact that here, like, we have one border that starts pushbacks, it's being criticized formally and officially by different authorities on an EU level, in other countries, and then it slowly starts farther. And I even heard this comment from Greeks that, well, you were all, you know, so full of human rights slogans and so on, but now when it came to your doors, like, yeah, like, you do the same thing. So who was right in this situation, right? It's the problem for me, the big one, is that there is no system. Nobody really thinks about this in a really global scale.
Yeah, we, Europe, world, is looking on migration as a emergency problem.
Yes.
Crisis.
Like, I don't know, for me, it's like economy or agriculture. You don't discuss, like, it's there. It's not good, not bad. Learn to deal with it, learn to... I like to compare migration to wind, that there is wind, always. Sometimes stronger, sometimes lighter, sometimes it's pleasant, sometimes it's not so easy. But then if you want to, you know, learn to build sails and meals in the moment when it's stronger, how to work with it, it would be just win-win-win for everybody. But probably it's easier to use it as a political tool.
It's so easy.
It's just like so easy.
So many elections are now being won in Europe because of this one issue.
The US.
I mean, look at Germany. You live in Germany. What is happening right now with the borders closing?
Yeah, and then the borders will again move. And I'm mentally already prepared for boats on the Baltic Sea coming from Russia to Europe, because why not?
Yeah. Even in the US now, migration is a huge issue.
Yeah.
The debate, I just talked about it non-stop,
As you know, they eat dogs and cats.
Yes. Oh my God, that was so funny. They are eating dogs there. So I read this, I don't know if it's true or not. You, as a journalist, as student journalist, you worked as the daily newspaper Gazeta Wyborcza, right?
I did.
Cool. So my information are correct. And so you know the ins and outs of the mainstream media there. How has the mainstream media handled the situation since the beginning? Oh, and is there anyone there who was brave enough to face the government and say the truth?
There was a lot of good coverage at the beginning because it was good news story at the beginning. And like with every other crisis, when it's going on for longer, it's becoming boring. Because how many times you can report the same sentence? In Greece, everybody knows it very well. How to raise interest of a journalist if for so many years they could write the same thing. I'm sometimes getting messages from journalists who came 3 years ago to Poland and covered it as a news story at that time, saying that they would like to come back, but they have to convince the editor to send them. And they are asking me, like, what should I tell to my editor? What's new? What changed? And I'm telling all of them the same, that if it was a story 3 years ago, and for 3 years nothing changed into better, just more and more people died, it's more of a story than it was 3 years ago. If you were interested in it 3 years ago, we can't stop talking about it. Yes, we can't normalize it, but it is being normalized. And I feel that slowly our mission is not to change the situation into better, but to try to keep it changing into worse as slow as possible.
That's so sad. That's so sad what you said. And the thing is, for example, the situation of local community there, we touched upon it a little bit, how people probably really do not understand, but the role of media, and especially local media, to really tell the stories and go deeper into what is happening there. The government and authorities, of course, yes, definitely, but to help people understand the situation and the complexity of the situation. It is really not happening. One person was telling me that they were in schools and kindergartens, they were making, those postcards that would be sent to the soldiers, right? Saying like, thank you postcards for supporting, for helping us, and so on. That local communities would gather to cook hot soups for soldiers, to organize some kind of donations, to give them like warmer clothing and places like those things into the gloves so they can warm their hands. It is a very, very cold area in the winters, like -15, -20 at night. But it wasn't done for refugees. The official line of this being a threat to the society took over completely.
When people don't understand why refugees are coming from some locations, it is much more difficult to empathize. And this is another difference with the war in Ukraine. Here, there are only Ukrainians. It's clear who is a victim. It's clear who is the enemy. The story is easy in a way. On the Polish-Belarusian border, we had people from, I think, 80 different countries. Every day, when I see statistics, I'm getting information from our activists every day. There are people from 20 countries crossing, and from different minority groups. And we cannot expect that an average Polish grandma living somewhere on the east will know, I don't know, who is Ahmadiyya minority from Pakistan and why he will face death penalty if he goes back. And here I think we turn into this absolute lack of education in Poland about the world around and about drivers of migration and also complexity of all of it. I think this would change a lot. I live in Germany. I have 2 kids. I've seen what was happening in 2015 in primary schools, how much education was about Syria and war in Syria, that the kids can understand who are those kids sitting with them in classes. And I don't want to, idealize anything, but thanks to the fact that Germany has a longer tradition of being country where people arrive, Poland is just starting it. And we need to do it on every level, not only as an answer to let's help somebody hungry in the forest, but people and at the beginning kids should understand why our life, our nice lifestyle in Europe, this is a consequence of what Europe was and is doing all over the world.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
It's not only the lack of education, it's the misinformation that they're spreading by saying these are criminals and coming to take our, our country and change it. And I have a question. I don't know if you can answer it because maybe it's dangerous for you or the Grupa Granica. How, in the movie, they show that there is an app that the refugee, the person who's in the swamps there, sends a message in the forest and you come pick them up. So
there is a number. There is the
so it's an
emergency number which people can call. Then we are getting in touch with these people. We try to find out as much as possible information. How big is the group? What age? What are the needs? What are the shoe size of people? Because if you have 10 people and you want to go through the forest with big backpack, you better take the right shoes not to go back. We do this kind of interview through the phone first.
Okay.
And well, this number is being spread by refugees. Right now, I think most of the people know it.
Okay.
But we have to remember that those people who call, so this 25,000 people with whom we've been in touch, those are the people who have our number. Those are the people who have a phone which is working, who I don't know, have it loaded, yes, not destroyed by any of the side of the border. So it's a tiny part of people who need help.
And some people, they don't trust anybody. They just want to do it their way because they think you will report them or they think it's just fake.
I had those situations that I was arriving to a group and they couldn't believe that we are Polish because all the experiences until us they had with Polish border guards or Polish local people who were trying to catch them or stop them or scare them. But when I'm talking about local people, it's also very, very important to say something positive about all this amazing answer of local people who were never interested, informed, who have nothing to do with human rights, and they just, in the moment they saw people in need, they started helping them with hosting them, taking them home. There is a lot of beautiful people who reacted this way. They cannot talk about it openly. They cannot show their faces or their houses because they want this place to be safe still for next people coming. But one day we will talk about all of them.
So many people, they have this excuse that they don't have much money, they don't have a lot of connections to help refugees. But you managed to make a huge difference just using social media, free tools, especially with the March for Aleppo. You did a lot, and you were nominated for Nobel Prize for Peace
Prize.
Yeah. So, what is your blueprint for someone who, want to help and they have only social media, and you did it? So, how did you do that?
Yesterday, I heard this beautiful sentence from my friend from Pakistan. It's some Urdu saying. I cannot repeat exactly, but it was something that instead of complaining about dark night, light your small candle. And I really love it because I think there is complaining or this whataboutism, asking why not me, why in this topic, why you help Syrians, why you don't help this. Like, let them talk, let them complain. And you do your little thing, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be giving your life away or moving somewhere or going to the forest. This is really tough. Yes, it's not every person can do it. But there are mothers with small kids all over Poland when the kids are sleeping, they are cooking those soups, that we have ready soups to give to the people in the forest. So just think about the smallest thing you can do, and there is this little candle making the light, and the more of them, I mean, this night will be very bright.
We speak a lot about the fact that this situation right now refers to the beginning of the Holocaust a lot. The dehumanization of refugees, the creation of divisions between us and them, attributing to them various characteristics that they supposedly have, accusing them of spreading disease, of being dirty, of changing our culture, of living off our welfare. So yes, when it comes to refugees, the reference to the beginning of Holocaust seems very appropriate to me.
What the person mentioned about that, in compared to what people were facing during Second World War to host a Jewish person, when they could be killed, the whole family could be killed for this. In compared to this, it's absolutely nothing to host a refugee now. Yeah. And still almost nobody is doing it. People who cross Polish-Belarusian border and they arrive to Germany, they very often stay in my flat. And for so many of my friends who are very open-minded and, you know, average European, well-informed people, they say they could never do that. And it's just, you know, it's just about giving your room for one night to someone or cooking a bit more soup. Yeah. It's absolutely nothing. And still almost nobody is doing it.
Yeah, so this is the candle.
There is this question, like, if you ever wonder what you would have been doing during Holocaust or whatever of these difficult history periods, check what you are doing now. And this is the answer.
Anya, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for all the questions.